Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mind Matters. On today's show, I've got a very special guest. He's a body transformation coach, and he used to be a PT, very successful PT who actually PT'd myself back in the day when he lived in Cardiff. Um, he's been a WBFF Pro fitness model, and he's also covered on center stage as a cover model. I'm really excited to have him here today. He's going to be sort of delving deep into the pros and cons of sort of living a healthy lifestyle, but he's also going to give you that no nonsense sort of open view upon, the struggles of, attaining a really good physique. Someone that, he's in awesome shape himself. I'm sure you'll all agree once you check out his profiles. Like I said, I'm really delighted to have him here today. So let's get chatting. Hi, Martin. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, Chad. Great. It's an honor to be on here, bro.
No, it's an honor to have you, honestly. So my first question, really, where I sort of want to start this show, is I'd like you to talk about the first time, or what drove you to start lifting weights, if you like, because I know we all have different sort of agendas as to why we would have ever started lifting weights. I know for me, it was when I was younger, like with kids and stuff, you've got these big bullies and things like that. So part of it for me was, in my mind, I thought, if I can train and sort of get myself muscular and strong, maybe people may not, mess with me, sort of thing. And my grandfather actually started training me about at the age of 13 in his living room. So what's your sort of story on how you got started with lifting weights?
Yeah. So initially, Chad, I just kind of fell into it because my mate was lifting weights at the time in Uick. You remember Uick? Obviously, the one in Kincoid there. They had the gym there. And my mate was lifting weights. We were only 14. We played around a little bit. And then it was David Lloyd's, right? So he was a member there. And I started going there with him. And because I was like 15 at the time, 15 going on 16, obviously it's essentially on natural steroids right at that age. It's like you got the testosterone levels of a gorilla, right? I was in the gym and I literally just did, this is no exaggeration either for the audience. I literally just trained, chest and biceps for around about 2 years. I didn't touch anything else. It was literally just bench press, bicep curls, maybe the odd shoulder press, but that was it. But yeah, I just kind of fell into it with him. And then I just started enjoying it. And what I noticed then is, actually, my chest is developing. I started building muscle. And to kind of answer the question as well, I was always skinny. I was like tall and skinny as a teenager. So, and in school, I wasn't popular really. I was just kind of like somewhere in the middle, you know what I mean? And then when I started building muscle, I was like, oh, wow, this is fantastic. You know what I mean? Getting a little bit, when I got to about 17 then, 18, I was kind of in the best shape then, really, out of all my mates and stuff. And also I was playing rugby at the time as well. And that's another reason why, because a lot of the boys, this is under 16s for Rumney. I don't know if the audience will know Rumney in Cardiff, but under 16s playing for them. And then when I started growing, I started noticing that I had more confidence on the pitch, in the contact area and stuff like that as well. And that gave me more motivation. And then you know what it's like? We're very competitive as well, right? So I was competing then with my mate to see who could do the most on the bench and everything else. And then, I just fell in love with it. And obviously fast forward to, 19, I'm 36 now. So I thought the other day I've been consistently lifting now, probably the same as you, for like 2 decades. So I started consistently lifting when I was like 16, 17. And that was like literally since then, I think I probably had like 2 weeks away from the gym in 20 years, you know what I mean? And ended up becoming a personal trainer then by the age of 20. And I was doing basic fitness coach stuff from the age of like 18, 19 and teaching classes. So luckily then that became my passion and my livelihood.
Nice. And so the transition to going into PT, was that an easy thing for you?
Yeah, to be honest, I was quite lucky as well because in David Lloyd's at the time, they actually paid for my PT qualification. It was a really good one as well. It was with National Academy of Sports and Medicine. So, and they stopped doing it just after I got it as well. So I was very lucky. So I got that opportunity and I just loved it. That was the only thing I really enjoyed in school. I didn't enjoy school, to be honest, and got into a little bit of trouble as well in school, to be honest. I was a bit of a nuisance. Like I wasn't bad. I wasn't a bad person or anything like that. But I was a bit of a nuisance. You know what I mean? Got criminal record in school, all that kind of stuff. You know what it's like, suspended a few times and all that. And I didn't really thrive in school, so to speak. But PE is the only thing in sports. Luckily, because I didn't have a dad around or anything like that from a young age. Luckily, my mum got me into sports, and that's what kind of kept me, reined in, if you like,
and narrow.
On the straight and narrow, man. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think it's to talk about sort of school, it's so easy to get overlooked, and I firmly believe that the way schools teach, they should be assessing each individual pupil to sort of go, right, this is where this child will thrive, because clearly, this person's good with numbers, or this person's good with athletics, and then hone in on those skills. I definitely think that the teachings in the school system at the moment is just way too generic.
Oh, 100%. Let's be honest. You hit the nail on the head with that, because there's so many talented kids in different areas, and we got this whole ADHD like epidemic and stuff like that now, right? It's crazy. But in terms of what you asked then, though, was it a tough transition getting into it? All in all, to answer that question, it was actually a little bit challenging, because I was working in like a call center at the time, just working in like dead end jobs. So obviously I was a little bit concerned about how am I going to actually make money doing this? Yeah. And I started off, not making much money, but because I loved it so much, when you're doing something you enjoy, it's like, wow, they're actually going to pay me anything at all just to be in the gym environment. You know what I'm saying? Where I spent most of my time anyway. So it was a blessing, really, bro.
So, for the listeners as well, who I'm sure listeners will know that what a PT is, personal trainer. But I think what some of them won't realize is that actually PTs are self-employed. So usually what happens is they work on a gym floor and they'll get paid sort of a low wage, just because they do a couple of shifts looking after the reception desk. But then in the most part, they'll make up their money by doing a self-employed, getting as many clients in as they can to sort of build their income up. How did you find that from a business perspective? How did you go about getting clients?
Yeah, I much preferred that. That's actually a great question, because long story short, I was working for David Lloyd's for about over a year, and I was doing what you said, working on the gym floor, working hours for the gym. And then if I picked up clients, then I would get paid a certain amount. They would take a big cut out of it. Then I went traveling for about 5.5 months around the world. And when I got back, that's when I got into like being self-employed then. But what I did learn is just the confidence element in David Lloyd's when I was working there, of just approaching people. Because what I noticed was, Chad, is that a lot of trainers were just lazy, essentially, and lazy, and also maybe it was a confidence thing or whatever. But a lot of them would just stand around the gym, just waiting for clients to appear and waiting for David Lloyd's to I would just approach people. I thought, okay, no one's actually doing this. Why is no one being approached? So I would just walk up to people and speak to them. And it's incredible what can happen when you literally play the numbers game, but also just chatting to people, because I was so passionate about it. I was happy to answer questions and everything else. And then that approach then obviously picked me up more clients and everything else. And then when I came back from traveling, then I had the confidence just to approach people. So I would just literally be in the gym, just approaching, right, how many people am I going to speak to today? This many, let's say 20 people, 10 people. And I just wouldn't leave the gym until I spoke to that many people. So I've always had that kind of like high work ethic. It's like, you're just going to speak to 10 people. And then it's like, okay, I get 3, taster session books in. Out of those 3 taster sessions, I converted 1 client. And then it's just a numbers game, really, right? So
I really like that, because too many people, especially nowadays, they think, I'll put an ad out, or make a few posters, or do sort of a little video online, or Facebook, social media. But the truth of the matter is, going and actually building a bit of rapport with a client and sort of going face to face with them is the best sort of advertising you can do for yourself. Going, right?
100%. Yeah, definitely. And just adding value, right? Just like you're doing on this podcast now, right? You're just coming in, you're adding value, you're having great conversations with people. And that's what life's all about, right? People expect to get progress without actually adding value. It's like, hang about a minute, you haven't actually added any value to that person's life. It's like, I would offer to give them a free session. So it's like, great, I've given them 30 minutes or whatever of my time, and they're going to get some value out of that. And if they come back, they come back. But if they don't, that's cool. But a lot of them did end up coming back, because they're like, oh, who was that PT? When they do want a PT, who was that guy that give me? And that's how it goes in any area of business. I think you gotta stand out from the rest, and you gotta build those relationships and connections, right?
Yeah, definitely. which brings me on to my next question, really, because you mentioned confidence there, something that I think you've never really struggled with. You won't believe
Oh, no,
how
actually, that's a really good question because I actually
is
have.
it?
I'm like that. You go in here. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously to do my research on you, I scrolled really far back on your Facebook profile, your personal one, right?
Oh.
Yeah, I found like the old you, because that's where we met, wasn't it? In UFit, and I was like, wow, like
Yeah.
UFit doesn't look like that anymore, and I was like, wow, look, that was some time ago, but everything I sort of saw of you with your career with the bodybuilding and what have you, you come across so confident. But can you just give the listeners in essence, where that confidence comes from, and just to talk a bit about confidence, I guess.
Yeah. And I love this question. I love this topic on confidence because let's be honest, a lot of people struggle with it. And a lot of people do that thing where, don't get me wrong, right? I'm certain that some of it's in your DNA, right? These characteristics. And obviously some of it's going to be genetic in terms of how you are, your personality and everything else. But, confidence really requires evidence, right? So to actually build confidence, the way I explain it to people is it comes down to your relationship with failure. So just to give you an example then, so when I was a teenager, like I said, in school, I wasn't very popular. I wasn't very confident. I was just like average, the usual stuff. I got when I was in primary school, I got bullied really bad because I moved schools. I went to the school and I got like absolutely just annihilated, bullied right in primary school. Then when I got to high school, then I was kind of just like in the middle, as I say, wasn't very confident, wasn't very popular, really anything like that. But then a lot of it did come from the gym though, man. Just simply showing up in the gym, right? And that's what I love about training. It's like very black and white. And you know this, you've trained for 2 decades. You show up and you get the results. You get better, right? Because you either die when you go to the gym. You're either going to die. You're not going to die. Like, the likelihood of you dying from going to the gym is slim to none. Or you're going to get injured, right? You're going to get an injury. That's going to stop you if it's a big injury. So all you got to do is avoid those 2 things. And then the body adapts and gets stronger and you get better and you look better, right? And over time, that adds, you feel better. Exactly. You perform better and everything's better, right? The libido's higher. We can keep going down the list. And then basically because of that, then obviously I looking better. I was naturally then getting more attention from the opposite sex as well, which kind of built, let's be honest, that builds your confidence as well. And that was like the main thing. But the big thing there was just being okay. I don't know where that comes from, actually. I think it might come from my upbringing and stuff like that. Like my mum, like I said, I didn't have a dad around and stuff. So my mum was always just determined to like make ends meet. So my mum's work ethic is just absolutely relentless. So I think I've just witnessed that from a young age as well. So it's like when I saw all these trainers, like I say, just standing around, for me, that was strange. I'm like, why are they standing around for? Like, why are they not working? It's just ingrained in me. So because of that, then, mate, many a times, as you can imagine, I'd approach people in the gym and I get in David Lloyd's as well. You get some snobs there and I would get shot down. You know what I mean? I would get shot down and they'd just be like, yeah, leave me alone or give me attitude and stuff. I'd be like, oh, that's great. Okay, I'll just move on to the next one. You know what I mean? That was just my attitude. But that confidence, you have to take action. People, they kind of sit around and wait for confidence. With self-confidence, you've got to put work in essentially and take action, and it requires evidence. So like a lot of people, for example, when it comes to getting in shape, they look and they go, they lose confidence with actually being able to get results and get sustainable results. Let's talk about fat loss or weight loss, right? We're facing an obesity epidemic. People have tried so many times, tried so many different approaches, and they haven't got what they want. They haven't got the results. So then they lose confidence in the process. But the reality is, a lot of the times, so I've taken on clients like this, right? When you look at, and we could use you as an example here, right? Like when you look at your life, what you've achieved, right? Successful, you're providing for 3 kids. We were talking about this yesterday, right? You've got lots of evidence in your life and you're already in good shape anyway before you signed up. But now we're going to the next level. You've got all that evidence that actually, you can get results in different areas of your life. And you've got confidence in those areas. So that is transferable then into another area, right? So it just requires evidence. So that's why I always say to people, it's like, look back at your career, right? How have you got to where you're at now, right? Look at the confidence you've got, right? So we need to transfer that now, and we need to take action and be prepared to take all the hits you're going to take, for example, getting in shape, all the mistakes you're going to make, all the setbacks and everything else, and just keep going and keep moving forward, right? So I think confidence requires consistency. It requires taking action, but it mainly comes down to your relationship with failure. You've got to be okay with going, okay, I have a win, or I just learn a lesson. Like I haven't failed. I'm not a failure, because people identify as, and you'll know about this, they identify as a failure if things go down the plan, and then they lose confidence because they cement that into their head. It's like, no, you've had a setback, get back up, brush yourself off, and keep going. And that's what builds your character, and your confidence just develops with that, you know?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's it comes down to choice as well. Whether so, you've touched there on you didn't have a father. I was exactly the same. My father left before I was even born to go back to Malaysia. So growing up, and we lived lived in we didn't have no money, a very unfortunate place, situation we were in, single mother looking after sort of three kids. So growing up, I always kind of wanted more out of life to what I actually had at that time. Now, a lot of people, because I'm not trying to play the violin or anything, but there's different types of people. So some people can have those cards dealt to them and go, well, I got a shit life, and I've got the confidence to do this, I've got confidence to do that. But like you said, it's about pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, getting those results, getting the wins, getting the losses, which will then give you something to go on and go, look at the progress I've made now through pushing myself out of my comfort zone and seeing my wins versus my losses and how far I've come. That now gives me the confidence that I can go even further.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, man. It's like build a muscle, right? It's like you've got to develop that muscle. You can call it confidence, you can call it whatever it is, right? You've got to develop that muscle of just taking action, right? Because that develops. If you keep going, right, you just get more confident because you get somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, but yeah, obviously, confidence is kind of like a broad subject. When we look at self-confidence and we look at applying confidence to whatever area of life that is, it simply requires action and evidence. You know what I mean? And a lot of people, they don't take enough action to actually deserve to get the confidence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
But one thing we just say there about building muscle, I just wanted, because I did mention this on a previous show that I did. The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, on some of his clothing range, he's got the slogan sort of progression through pain. Yeah. What's your thoughts on that in terms of training, working out, and
progression through pain? Yeah, I mean, that is kind of what it is, right? I've never actually seen that, but when you look at it though, because the reality is, I was thinking about this the other day, although people like me and you, for example, right, we've developed a lot of muscle, right, and we've put ourselves through a lot of pain in the gym, for example, but you don't really think about it, do you? Because it's just kind of normal now. You know what I mean? It's like you've developed, your body's adapted, you've essentially you've just insulted your body in the gym, right? Because when you train, for example, if you could have like a scan after training, it's just inflammation. It's not good for the body. You're just hammering the body and inflaming it. But then obviously it gets stronger, the body, it bounces back, it repairs, and then you start looking better. So when you look at someone who's in fantastic shape, it's like they've been through a lot of pain. You know what I'm saying? They got a lot of discipline. So you said progress through pain. That is exactly what it is, right? And I love this very simple equation I learned off a friend of mine, and also look at him as a bit of a mentor, to be honest. Jay Alderton. I don't know if you've heard of Jay Alderton. Yeah. Well, he's got a really good book, and basically it's just rest plus rest plus stress equals growth, right? Or stress plus rest equals growth.
Yeah.
And that applies to like your muscles or applies to your brain, right? Ultimately, you have to apply stress. So if you want to achieve something in your personal life, for example, or in your professional life, whatever that is, you want to get a promotion, you want to build your own business, that's going to take a lot of stress. So ultimately, success, when you look at Dwayne Johnson, for example, if you look at the amount of stress that guy's been through to get to where he's at. So now what's happened over time is his stress tolerance levels are just in the 0.0001% of people. He can just manage a lot of stress. He can just handle it because he's basically chased it for his whole life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To get to that level in the gym and outside of the gym, So it's a very simple equation for the audience. Stress plus rest. You got to have the rest. That's a big, really important part because you won't get anywhere without that. Equals growth. And you can relate that to muscle or in life,
Yeah. Like anything you do, like a business or anything.
100%.
Yeah. So whilst we're talking about training then, again, I went through your Facebook profile back in May 2016. You were deep squatting 160 kilos for 6 sets. Are you still doing those kinds of numbers now? And
no, mate, I was actually talking about that. Yeah, exactly. I know you're shooting me down now. No, I don't, mate. It's when I look back at that, I'm like, wow, I was just that's actually a really good point because that's when I was just kind of almost finishing the bodybuilding stuff.
Mm,
So I was like, right now I just want to focus on anything other than aesthetics, because
yeah,
like for about 3 years, bro, it was constantly
consumes
got to
you.
work on this body part, work on that body part. Even if I didn't have a comp, you'd be kind of off season or whatever you want to call it. And I'm constantly trying to develop. I'm always at the forefront of my mind. I'm checking my abs. I was that guy who was checking my stomach, like 20 times a day in the mirror minimum. Getting up for a piss early hours in the morning, check my abs 3 times. It was just gets ridiculous, bro.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was nice to actually focus on strength, and then I got some big numbers in. But no, I'm nowhere near that, bro. Now, to be honest.
Yeah, well, the kind of the reason I'm sort of asking you that, I guess, is because, and I'm guilty of this, because we're working together right now anyway. Of I want to be pushing those big weights, but if you could just tell the listeners the reasons why it's not always so great to be like trying to smash like massive numbers on the weights, and the reasons why that reining back your sort of the numbers that you do in terms of weight is it can be more beneficial for you from a not bodybuilding but like from a health perspective.
Definitely, and physique as well, yeah. Because right now I don't lift anywhere near those numbers, but my technique is so much better, and that's the most important thing for anyone listening back. Instead of when you go to the gym, instead of looking at, and I've said this to Chad like before, instead of looking at it like I'm going to go and work out, right? The way you should be looking at it to maximize results is I'm going to go and practice. I'm going to go and practice those movements. I want to get better at those movements technique wise. Yes, you need to overload your body. So you do need to add more weights or more reps or whatever each week. But it's even better to actually slow down the reps like I've got you doing many a time, right? You actually overload the body better and you're forced to like level up your technique when you just slow down the reps and apply more tension to the muscles. So, mate, like I can do so little now to like look absolutely incredible. Not that, yes, I want to look, I'm not going to lie, obviously, who doesn't want to look good? I want to look great, right? Obviously, but that's not my main drive now. It's like what really keeps me going now is the mental and emotional health benefits that I get. And just thinking about longevity. I want to be lifting weights till the day I die. Whereas those videos you looked at, I didn't give a shit about that. And I was just trying to lift some heavy weights,
Yeah,
Sorry, man. I'm swearing on the podcast here. Sorry about that,
it's
mate.
all right,
Might
it's
have to,
good.
might have to bleep that out. Yeah, man. So I would say to the listeners, definitely there's a place for focusing on strength. And, I think for a lot of people, it's good to set goals with strength, whether that be simple stuff like I'm going to try and, hit my PB on deadlifts or get as strong as I can on deadlifts or pull-ups. I'm going to learn how I'm going to be able to do pull-ups, bodyweight pull-ups. Some people, and working towards that stuff can be good because it switches your attention away from constantly looking, have I lost fat? Is my body improving? Because people are so fixated on that. And then what happens then, Chad, is they just get, and you've experienced this before, and so have I. You just get disheartened then, and you just want to throw in the towel because you're always going to be disappointed when you're focusing on that. But yeah, all in all, definitely technique is number one. There is a place for focusing on performance, but forget about all that if you haven't worked on the mechanics and getting good at each movement and practicing the movements.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things, like you said, like slower reps, has definitely been a massive game changer for me since working with you. I even said to my training buddy the other day, because you know what it is, you see some other people on the gym floor and they've got weights which are way too heavy for them, and they're sort of, they jerk in the motion and not getting the full range of motion in those sets. And I said to him, I was like, you know what, I'm more than cool with dropping my weight down. I don't care what people think, like how much weight he's lifting, and getting nice, clean, slow reps in. And you feel the burn so much more sometimes with doing slow, clean reps than you do having something heavier and trying to smash out 10 reps really quickly.
100%. And it's like, if you want to get better results in the gym, like you can apply this to lots of different areas, but a lot of times just look around and do what the other people are not doing, right? Because like when you do the slow, what you never see, it's rare. I don't think I ever see people doing slow reps in the gym. You just never see it. It's the most underused kind of variable, best way to apply tension to your muscles and get results. But even with you, Chad, as well, right? Because you look at your back, especially, right? And how your posture's improved and how much your muscles have developed. And obviously you've been lifting for like 2 decades prior to that. So it just goes to show that it's a variable that you haven't actually, it's a curveball you threw at the body, right? Which is what a lot of people need to do.
Definitely, definitely. So whilst we're talking about training and everything, and I know we've brushed a little bit on um your your bodybuilding, should we go a little bit deeper then? So um I again, going through your story last night, I did see a post that you made about a time that you nearly lost your life. Was which was through taking drugs. Was
Yep.
that sort of the point in time where you kind of went, enough is enough, and then that propelled you into, you basically went, I'm going to go into bodybuilding.
It was actually around that time, actually, yeah, because that happened. I think that was like April 2013. I think that happened, and then I got into bodybuilding that same year. Actually, yeah, I never thought about that. So that was definitely a massive wake up call. Yeah, just for the it's not something I'm proud of, right? Luckily, I can laugh about it now, right? But
Mhm.
it was like GHB anyway. The what they call the I don't know if I want to say that word on here just in case, but anyway, GHB. It's like long story short, I was doing stupid stuff in my 20s. I was doing all sorts of stuff, right? I had a good time, you know what I mean? But it came at a heavy price. And basically, one time I was just taking that stuff with my mates. My mate was used to take it on nights out. And I thought, oh, I'll try that then. You know what I mean? And I was just doing stupid amounts of it. And long story short, anyway, you're not supposed to have it with alcohol. Like, that's how people die. I didn't know that. And then I ended up in hospital. And luckily, that's another thing with strength training as well. They said your heart was like, luckily, your heart is conditioned and really strong. My heart rate went down to like 25 beats per minute, and they were
Wow.
gonna pump adrenaline into me. And then I came around and they said, yeah, your heart is super strong. If it wasn't for that, your strength and everything, because essentially it's a muscle, right? The cardiac muscle.
Yeah.
So and the benefits on the heart are actually better than cardio from strength training. Now research shows it. So anyway, luckily because of that. But yeah, just to answer your question, that was a massive wake up call. But to be honest, though, I mean, obviously, I didn't do that again, GHB and stuff. I was still, like partying and stuff like that after that, but I wasn't going crazy. It was a massive wake up call. And then basically a few months after that, then I moved. I was living in like a bachelor's pad with my mate. And then I just went back home with my mother for a bit. And then that's when I was like, yeah, I'll focus on this. And I need something to focus on now to take me out of that lifestyle. And yeah, that was a whole week. If we can go there if you want. But then that was like, it was a great thing that happened because it helped me achieve things and build confidence again. And then that's how I started building my following, and everything really leveled up from there. But then that came at a price as well, then, because obviously bodybuilding, that you're essentially going from like partying and all that extreme stuff to another extreme, right?
The
So
new, yeah, new
bodybuilding,
obsession. Yeah.
a new obsession, bro. Yeah, if you look at the behaviors, it's what it is. And then I got obsessed with everything. Then I got binge eating disorder. We can talk about that. Struggle with binge eating and emotional eating for about 18 months to 2 years. The bit more of the body dysmorphia stuff then kicked in as well. So yeah, man, that's another conversation. We can go there if you want, though.
Yeah, definitely. Because people tend to see bodybuilders and they just see this amazing shape, the physique that they've chiseled out for themselves. But what people don't see is the sort of behind the closed doors of the emotional roller coaster of, having to really restrict themselves down to get themselves in the, to get them in the best shape of their lives. But then once that show is finished to complete, the emotional roller coaster that you've got to go through in terms of, well, I can eat what I want to eat now because I've earned it. And then it's that binge eating, like you said. Just, do you want to just talk about how that tends to go with bodybuilding?
Yeah, absolutely. So, because obviously it's not a healthy thing to do, bodybuilding, right? Period. It's just not healthy to do. So you're getting down to, on the calipers, I was like 3-4% body fat, right? Shredded. And I didn't really know what I was doing either. So it's, there's a dark side to it. At the time, it was funny because I just jumped on stage on a whim, and, I was already in great shape, and I came second. I think I came second out of like 12 people. And then I actually qualified for the British finals. That wasn't the plan. I was just going up there to the experience, right? Because I was already in good nick, and I didn't know what I was doing. I just started. I thought I was Rocky or something, I just started eating more egg whites and stuff. Didn't know what I was doing. Jumped up there, came second, got into the British finals. I'm like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. And that's when things kind of went downhill then, because I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, right, okay, we got, I think it was 6 weeks before that comp. And I had like this old school bodybuilder, right? Like give me a diet plan, which was super restrictive. Like I was probably having like such low calories, and I was doing cardio, and I ended up getting super shredded. But I restricted myself so much, like unnecessarily. I was just eating probably 4 or 5 different foods. It was literally the typical chicken broccoli diet, right? For like 6 weeks after I'd already done a show, right? And then after that, then as I like 2 weeks before the comp, I'm starting to get all these foods that I'm like craving, like I want, not necessarily craving, but that I'd been restricting. And I started making a list, right, as long as my arm, basically, of all these foods I wanted to eat after the show. After the show, then I was binge eating for, probably the best part of a week, and I felt absolutely horrendous afterwards, like bloated and all this kind of stuff, feeling down because I didn't get the results I wanted on stage either. I didn't even get in the top, whatever it was. And then I'm like, wow. And that's then when, those behaviors started happening, because there's stuff going on physiologically when you get shredded for a comp. You're getting so shredded that, things happen to your hormones and stuff. Like there's a hormone, leptin, which is like the satiety hormone. And long story short, that kind of tells you when you're full. And, that drops by like 40-50%, right? So your hormones are out of whack, but then it's the psychological impact then of being in that diet mindset, which, I know we've had conversations about before. And yeah, then that's when the kind of what would happen then after that comp is on the weekends. Even if I didn't compete then for probably about almost a year, maybe 9 months after that. But then it was just on the weekends. Then all I knew, because I was shredded as well on stage, then in your head with the body dysmorphia stuff, you're like, okay, now I want to try and keep those abs. Now I know what's achievable in terms of getting shredded. I want to stay like that now. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But that's not sustainable. So then I'm cutting back all week then, just in general now. And when it gets to the weekend, then obviously, I've been restricting too much. And then I'd have like a burger and chips or whatever, maybe some ice cream on a Friday night. And then Saturday, I would punish myself in the gym the next day because I went overboard. And then Saturday night would come around, it'd be like a Domino's, and it was just like that. It was just like basically binging and that's to answer your question as well. All the partying as well. What I was doing then is I was replacing, the feelings I was getting from partying and stuff. I was staying in on the weekends, but then I was obviously eating, like binge eating or at least emotional eating, whatever you want to call it, to replace that feeling I was getting. And that kind of went on for about 2 years. And then I had to fix it then, you know what I mean?
So what has been your secret? Because of course I know now you don't live that type of lifestyle anymore. You're still able to maintain a great physique. What has been the magic secret recipe, if you like, to your success now compared to then?
Yeah, it's definitely no secret, man. That's the thing, isn't it? When I look back at the how long the process was to get into where I'm at now, where I'm just, I'm shredded all year round, but I don't think about it. It's not even anything. I don't think about having abs. I don't think about anything. And that is the only way you get to that point, right? There's like way more multimillionaires walking around than there are people walking around with abs, right? There's not many people just walking around with abs. So, for it to be sustainable like that, it needs to be your body and your abs and your physique and everything else. It needs to be a byproduct of the way you're living. So cut a long story short, when it comes to the nutrition element, instead of, right, I'm not going to eat Domino's. This is what people do. See, this is the mistake people make. Right, I'm not going to eat Domino's. I've quit sugar. How many times have you been? I've quit sugar. I've quit. It's like, sure. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like it's unrealistic. And then people just chase their tail for decades and end up getting fatter and sicker. That's essentially what's happening on a global level to most people now, because the approach is wrong. So with me, I educated myself. I actually started listening to podcasts. Actually, this was back in 2015. Like literally when no one even knew what a podcast was. I'm going to shout them out now. Actually, Mind Pump. It's like the world's leading fitness podcast. I've been on there, end up building a relationship with them, but learning from them, because it was stuff I already knew, but I was kind of like hesitant to take action on things like, you don't need to eat. Like I was stuck in the bodybuilding mindset, which has no science to back it up. And it's actually a load of BS. Like you've got to eat you got to eat 6 meals a day, or you got to eat every 2 to 3 hours. Otherwise, you're going to pare down muscle. All this kind of absolute nonsense, which makes no sense. And in my head, I'm like, this just doesn't seem right. It doesn't add up. Like if you hit enough protein, surely it's going to be. So then I just started going longer periods without food. It's like, if I went overboard, I would go, right, okay, the next day I went overboard there. Next day, I'm just going to not eat till like lunchtime. What I came to realize was actually, I don't need to eat breakfast. I don't necessarily have to eat breakfast, especially after what I ate last night. And then I started realizing I feel a little bit better, actually. When I go a longer period without food, I actually feel I got a little bit more energy. So it was kind of like intermittent fasting, but I wasn't thinking about fasting at the time. And I don't think that's a good approach for people to look at someone who's struggled to restrict calories for their whole life to start doing fasting, because then instantly, you're taking away again, right? So fasting is restricting again, right? Yeah. So you've got to look at adding things in. So that was one thing I was doing, but the main thing I was doing was just simply adding in more whole food. So I was like, right, I started getting gut issues because of the foods I was eating and how much I was eating. I'll be lying in bed after, smashing 4,000 calories or whatever, just like in pain. And I'm like, this has got to stop. So I started, as I say, just like giving myself a break from eating in the mornings if I would go overboard. And then I would just eat more vegetables, more, whole foods. I started then naturally wanting to eat more of those foods. And that's kind of the answer, because it doesn't happen overnight. You've got to get to a point where you're paying attention to what foods are doing for you other than how the foods taste. Now, the average person, the only value they look at with food is how the food tastes. They haven't actually connected to any other dots yet. How's your energy? How's your gut when you eat those foods? How's your cravings? You know what I mean? All those kind of things. Or how do you feel in terms of your, when you eat sugar, for example, you have a load of sugar. How do you feel afterwards? Do you get a crash? Do you get any issues with your gut? Is your sleep bad, or kind of like does your sleep degrade? All those kind of things. And I just started slowly, because I was just eating more whole foods and more good quality foods. I started wanting to have more of those foods, because I noticed then, going back to what you were talking about in 2016, that's actually when I started applying that. And what I noticed then is I'm getting stronger in the gym, like what you saw with the squats. I was actually hitting some PBs in the gym. I thought, wow, this is actually working. My gut is healed. I'm feeling like I've got more energy. I'm not craving those foods as much, although I was still, slipping at times. And then over time, then it was just a gradual process of wanting more and more whole foods, and then still enjoying the other foods, but then realizing actually it's not worth it. It gets to a point where it's like, no, I'm not going to have the pizza, because I know I've got to deal with, I'll still do that every now and then. But now where I'm at now, mate, the fast forward to like 2023, it's like those foods to me now, it doesn't even register as food. There's no signal there to eat those processed foods, whether that be, I like my dark chocolate. I do like dark chocolate. It's like 85% minimum, but all those processed foods now, when it comes to biscuits, cakes, all those kind of things, I just don't have the desire to have those foods anymore. And that's what happens when you spend a long period of time just like fueling your body. And I enjoy my meals. I never feel restricted. I eat a lot of like steak and red meat and stuff like that. I enjoy those foods. I eat like fruit, mainly just meat and fruit primarily. And I never feel restricted, and I enjoy the way I eat. But yeah, to get to that point, man, it's like there's very few people who actually get there, man. It's like it's a journey and it's a process. And it means you've got to really pay attention to health ultimately. When you focus on health, the things I was talking about, getting good sleep, performing well in the gym, focus on your performance instead of the physique. Focus on, how's my energy levels? Is my libido improving? Because that's what should be happening. When you're getting stronger and you build a muscle, your testosterone levels go up. So just paying attention to all those things. And when those health markers improve, everything else improves with it,
It's kind of like having that mind-body connection, isn't it? And listening to what your body's telling you. I feel as though far too many people don't listen to their bodies. They kind of just, will unconsciously eat. And then regardless of how that's making them feel, they'll just continue to go about their day. I mean, who would think that just eating whole foods would be, so difficult? It's
100%.
It's not anything crazy, is it? It's just whole foods. But
I know it sounds so easy when we say that, but it sounds so easy, but it's like it's a simple thing. And like we were just talking off air, eating single ingredient foods. That's what I've been telling Chad, and you've been implementing, right? For the most part, we were just talking then about making good decisions for the most part. But with yourself, you'll notice this, Chad, as well. Let me ask you this: like with your emotion, when you're emotionally a little bit unstable, right? When you've got more stress, right, and stuff like that, and you don't have coping mechanisms to deal with that, that's when people turn to food, right? And that's what I was doing, man.
Totally.
So that emotional health and mental health is the key, because ultimately your relationship with food really says more about your relationship with yourself and your emotional. When I say emotional health as well, it's part of mental health, but it's a little bit different. It's like your ability to manage stress, like coping mechanisms for stress, your resilience, your ability to essentially control your emotions. When you learn to have outlets for your emotions, when you're feeling stressed, because the reality is food is the most abused drug on the planet. I was abusing it. People eat food when they're lonely, stressed, bored, turn to food. It's so easy. It's more easily accessible than any other time in human history, so it's like all those forces are fighting against us. So it's one of those things where you've got to work on yourself first and take care of yourself, and then everything else follows.
A massive question that I have got in terms of nutrition, because I've had a good few arguments with my family over this, because I started eating more red meat now on a regular basis. And it's that age old, what is it? The wives' tales of, well, you shouldn't eat too much red meat because it's bad for you. You can't digest it properly. Can you give the listeners, and hopefully my family who will probably listen to this, because whenever I get into this sort of this argument with them, I'm kind of like, look, it's fine. You can eat red meat. Can you give the listeners your view on that?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's a fantastic question, and I still get pushback and stuff, right? But it is becoming slowly more mainstream now, like the whole carnivore thing. And the thing is with nutrition, just for everyone listening, like it's very complex, right? They're still figuring it out. It's actually way more complex than what people think.
It's a
You see people
minefield.
talking, oh, it's a minefield, and everyone's an expert. You see people talking about keto. It's confusing. It's overwhelming for a lot of people, man. But there's so much variance from person to person, which is going back to what I was saying then. You have got to pay attention to how you feel. Just because I eat, quote unquote, an animal-based diet, right? So like I said, I eat mainly meat and fruit and I'm thriving, I feel great. Doesn't mean it's going to work for the next person. Although, so to answer your question with the red meat, there's basically no research on this, right? So what the funny thing is, all the research done on, for example, red meat, it's done on observational studies, right? So what they do is they get a massive group of people, right? Just average people, right? And they do these studies, and then cut a long story short, what they find is people who, have higher rates of heart disease, for example, right? They have quite a lot of meat in their diet. And that's pretty much it, really. So it's like there's so much contextual variance. Like, how many people do you know, Chad, right, that are eating like grass-fed steak with asparagus, right, when they're eating meat? Do you really think these people that they did in the study, like how many of them do you really think are sitting there with, a grass-fed steak and veggies like you are in the mornings, right? Most people are eating bloody burgers, McDonald's, going back to processed foods. Most people are just overeating processed foods. There's no way you're going to be overweight unless you're eating too much processed foods. So not all meat is treated equally, first and foremost, and you can't rely on observational data. So there's loads of research done now anyway, like pretty much debunking it. And with the whole cholesterol thing as well, that's essentially a myth in terms of the eggs and stuff like that. Like, they've done research to find that actually it makes no difference to your LDL levels and stuff eating eggs. It's just your body. That's another conversation as well, right? Because it's very, very complex. But going to the red meat thing, long story short, they did huge studies in like Asia, right? For example, in China and Asia, they eat loads of meat, like heaps of meat. That's pretty much all they eat in certain parts of China. And the longevity, I think it was Hong Kong or it was just China, like the longevity they have is insane. They did massive studies, but a lot of these studies have been hidden from us, right? So there's no kind of like interventional studies. There's nothing at all which shows red meat causes heart disease, right? And if you think about it, like yes, we've got all this research now, which tells us it's a load of BS. But also, when you just look at like common sense, it's like we evolved, like, as hunter-gatherers. I mean, you could debate that if you want to, like, none of us were there as hunter-gatherers, but the evidence we've got shows that we evolved and we were hunter-gatherers. We would hunt animals, we'd eat the hell out of anything in sight, basically, to survive, right? So you can imagine, and it's just, it doesn't make any sense. The most nutrient, just for the listeners, right? Like, literally, if you're eating beef or steak or beef mince or whatever, it's probably the only food on the planet you could eat just by itself. Well, it is the only food you can eat by itself, right? And likely not get a nutrient deficient. I wouldn't recommend that to everyone, obviously, but I'm just giving you an extreme example. It's got all the micronutrients, the balance of proteins and fats. They've just done some research now and they found there's like 70,000 different compounds in red meat. It's very complex, but long story short, not all meat's treated equally. Eating processed like sausages and McDonald's and stuff, and that poor quality processed meat, as opposed to just eating single ingredient foods. Like if you get a steak, grass-fed beef, that's the ingredients, right? From grass-fed cows, for example, because grass-fed cows are way better for you. If you eat like a grain-fed cow, you're going to be consuming a lot more kind of toxins, and the balance of, fats is not the same and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, cut a long story short, it's a lot of BS. Research kind of points to this now as well. And if you want, you can even add into your show notes, like I've had loads of specialists, or you can just send some of the audience over to my podcast, because I had like Dr. Anthony Chafee on recently, and he's got all the research on underneath his, I think I sent you before, underneath his channel and stuff, so it's actually the opposite. The funny thing is, just one more thing on that, the funny thing is, it's like eggs an egg yolk is like the perfect multivitamin. It's the most nutrient dense food next to red meat. And they're the two things that have been demonized for a long time, right? And then they've got the grass right, Chad, like I said to you before. And for the listeners, you can look online at this since like, I think it was 1967 or maybe 1973, something like that. When they started bringing out these processed foods, you know, sugary cereals and all that kind of stuff, people started eating these processed foods. Heart disease ever since has just slowly risen. Now it's rising faster and faster and faster ever since people were eating processed foods, which are designed to make you overeat. When you ever go to a restaurant, right, order a steak, yeah, and then order another one because you want more. You just don't do it. You're full. You're satiated, right? When you go and eat bread and all that kind of crap, you want to keep eating it, don't you?
Yeah. Funny enough, I'm glad you mentioned that doctor you had on your podcast, because I actually listened to that episode, and what he said on there about the cholesterol thing, that was, you know, that's what they use to demonize sort of the red meats and what have you, is it's high cholesterol. But I can't remember exactly how he put it across, but it's been proven now that, you know, actually the cholesterol's nothing to do with the heart disease, and it's exactly like what you've just said about there. It was the introduction really of these sort of cereal bars and you know, mainstream media pushing people having cereal for breakfast instead of, you know, having like what I've been eating, you know, steak and avocado and eggs or what have you. And I think that's the issue, is that there's so much misinformation out there. There's an absolute minefield of you know, nutritional facts that the average public, and this is why I'm getting so much pushback from my family. You know, they look and they're like, "Oh, you're having a steak for breakfast," and I'm like, "You're having cereal for breakfast, which is full of sugar," you know. And you know, we know now, you know, it's proven that too much sugar in your diet is no good for you.
100%, man. Yeah. And what we should both do, maybe at the end of the year, right? We should both get like blood tests as well, just to like, so we can see where we're at, right? With our tests and our kind of balance of lipids and all that kind of stuff. But the number one thing, Chad, right? People, they worry about all this stuff, like your family. And I had the same pushback from my family with salt. I was adding loads of salt to my meal, and they were like, "Oh my God, you know, you're going to get high blood." I'm like, yeah. Like you just leave it, right? I'm not going to get into that conversation with them, you know. But and I understand it, because they've essentially been brainwashed, right? But then, you know, those people saying it to me, well, you know, they were overweight, right? And the worst thing for you, the most important thing for like longevity is strength, is being strong, right? There's loads of research now that show there's a test you can do, a grip strength test. And people who score higher on that live much longer, and they also have better quality of life. Yeah. And then there's also metabolic health. In other words, how much fat are you carrying, right? Especially around your internal organs. Because a lot of people, the last thing they got to worry about is eating a steak when they're carrying all this internal fat around their organs, right? Which is essentially like the word visceral fat, they call it.
Yeah.
It's the most dangerous place. And, you know, metabolic health, in other words, like how your metabolism is operating, how much body fat you've got around your organs, that's the most important thing for longevity. So, you know, you've got to look at, you know, what foods are actually going to keep me satiated. And, you know, this is another conversation, but as you know yourself, Chad, sorry, mate, don't know where that came from. Chad, we're always chasing, like, you know, right, let's make sure we hit that protein target. Because when you're having high protein, you know, you blunt your appetite, speed your metabolism up, you get more nutrients in because you're eating, you know, more meat and eggs and stuff like that. And ultimately, you just don't overeat. So that's the problem people are facing. They're overeating continuously and getting, like I said, fatter and sicker. So that's what we got to look at. We got to look at eating in a way which keeps you satiated, which makes you feel good, right? And paying attention to those things, really.
Because these processed foods, they make you overeat, don't they? It is, you know, they're made in a particular way so that you can't, you know, it's like the Pringles, isn't it? Once you pop, you can't stop, and they're literally made that way, isn't they?
100%, mate. There's actually, I'll just say, I always talk about a study, but real quick, there's actually a study on it now. They make you overeat by 508 calories, to be precise, a day, right? So they did this study and they crossed the groups over as well, right? To make sure it was like not too much individual variance. They crossed the groups over and the same thing happened, right? So they give them unlimited access to whole foods, unlimited access to processed foods. The processed food group ate 500 calories more a day. Just for the audience, right? That's 3,500 calories extra a week. That works out roughly about a pound of fat you would gain a week, right? From processed foods, right? So when we say processed foods, we're talking about ultra processed foods that come out of a packet Like, just have a look, right? Because people never do this. When you do your food shop, when you're getting stuff out, have a look at the packet, have a look at the list of ingredients, right? You want to be eating single ingredient food as often as possible, just like my man Chad's been doing to get such great results. And mate, the discipline you've put in as well to be where you're at now and build this foundation. It's not easy, right, bro? And a lot of people, they make excuses. I hate to say it, but it's like, they make excuses and they just don't kind of implement the simple things, like we say, which simple and easy are different. It's challenging. It takes preparation, like we were just talking about, time management, and you've got to have a reason to do it as well, right? You've got to have a real reason to change.
It's about changing the habits and the behaviors, isn't it? Like, you've been on the journey yourself, to get to where to get to where you are right now. You've talked earlier about how through your bodybuilding and your early fitness journey of sort of, being in that pattern of binge eating, then going back to it to clean eating, binge eating, clean eating. We're all, you're right, it's not easy, but we have to, evolve and learn as you go along to breaking those patterns. And yes, it's a challenge to break those patterns, but it's the compound effect, isn't it? The longer you keep doing the new patterns of, healthy eating and eating the right way to build muscle and to build a longer life for yourself, then it just becomes second nature.
100%, man.
I just
100%.
wanted to switch things up a little bit now then. I know you've said and talked about in the past that you would like to have kids at some point. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, good. Okay, so have you visualized how you might still achieve the routine that you currently have? Because we all know that as soon as kids come into the equation, your life completely changes. So how do you think you may still be able to live the life that you're living now to keep the your healthy lifestyle and the physique that you've got when kids come along?
Well, the simple answer to that is I'll have to compromise a bit, man. You know what I mean? It's one of them things where I'm not going to be able to have that freedom that I have now to keep my personal standards high. Now, don't get me wrong, right? This is where a lot of people go wrong. And it's easy for me to say, I know I haven't got kids, and people are, it's easy for you to say. But the reality is, it's like brushing my teeth now. So it's a good question because, for example, right, if I don't do certain things, I just don't feel as good. So it's like, let's say I have kids, for example, now, right? And then, I get thrown out of whack, right? I can't do my workout in the gym or something, right? I'll notice then I'm not as good. I'm just not as good mentally, not as balanced emotionally and everything else, right? But I'll be able to persevere as long, and that's why it's so important, right? To have the right partner in crime as well, right? To pick the right person to have kids with, because I feel like for me, it's been so hard to meet someone like Janini, it's literally, I haven't met anyone, right? Who lives like me. It's like rare to find, you know what I'm saying?
She probably lives a bit more extreme than you, doesn't she?
Yeah, exactly, mate. 100%. She does, bro. Yeah, she gets more sleep when she's asleep by 9 o'clock, that girl, mate. Even earlier than that, 8:30 sometimes, bro. She's out. So that's exactly right, mate. So and that's why I think, we'll work together. But I know it's going to be challenging. I know it's going to really, it would be a struggle. But then at the same time, because these things have been cemented in just simple things like I can't sit around, I have to move, So, even if I've got a kid and I'm doing stuff and I can't do my gym session, I'll do more movement to make up for it. I'll find a way to walk more. You know what I'm saying? And with food, as I say, because I don't desire those. So I could be going for the most stressful time in my life, right? Kids, stressed up to my eyeballs, you name it, right? And I still won't want to eat those foods, And that's where a lot of people go wrong. It's like you get stressed. Oh, I missed a meal. I can go without food. I can have one meal a day and I'm fine.
What about feeding your kids? As in, so
that's going to be a tough one.
Well, exactly. I'm not eating those vegetables. So you cooked yourself the meal that you're like, yep, this is like full steak and eggs and asparagus, and your kid's like, no, I'm not eating that. Do you?
Yeah, well, I'll just abandon them, bro. You know what I'm saying? I'll just kick them out onto the streets. Problem solved.
I think the biggest one for you guys though would be, well, as you know, that research suggests that sleep is super important for your health. Again, we know that when kids come along, the sleep deprivation kicks in. So I think that'll probably be the biggest challenge.
That'll be the biggest challenge, and that's the thing, bro. That's a really good point, right? Because some people, they might struggle to not have food, right? I'm okay. I'm cool with food. Sleep, no, not good at all. Like literally, I could get like not I don't want to say the word depressed, but like I can get so low just from having like one night's really poor sleep. I'm low, you know, and I think that's because I'm so dialed with it for the most part. I think when you do things and you are quote unquote healthy, you train consistently, you sleep well. When you don't do those things, you really feel it much more. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Mm,
that'll be the biggest challenge, man. So that's going to be one of those things where it's just like anything, like adapt or die, isn't it? It's like I was saying in the
yeah.
gym. Go to the gym, right? You have it. You're not gonna. I mean, the chance of you dying in the gym, touch wood, that's not gonna happen to no one, right? You adapt and you get stronger, right? So I think it'd have to be the same case with kids. I can only imagine how hard it'll be. I can't even like. It's hard to even fathom, right? When you haven't got them, but like your routine, you can kiss it goodbye at times because it's going to go out the window. You know what I'm saying? It's as simple as
Yeah.
that. That's it.
Well,
That'll be interesting to see how I do deal with it, bro. Right? So time will tell.
I think you'll be fine, mate. You'll be, because I see lots of people now running around the street with the pushchair, and they've gone out for a run literally with, their baby in the pushchair, and they're running around the block. It's become quite a thing now for new parents to stay in shape by doing things like that.
That's something I would do, mate. Or you'd see me doing walking lunges with them down the street. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
Whilst they're crying their eyes out.
yeah. It's a choice though, isn't it? Like you say, some people have kids and then they go, well, I've got kids, so I can't look after
Hmm.
myself. But at the end of the day, if you can't look after, you need to look after yourself first to be able to be there for your kids.
Dude, I'm going to say this how it is, and this might, ruffle a few feathers, but that is such a huge mistake that people make, and I totally understand, right? I totally get it, and because a lot of people will say this, it's easy for him to say he hasn't got kids, right, or whatever, like, but where does that mindset get you, though, right? Because a lot of people say that, it's very easy to get into that victim mindset and say, it's okay, they haven't got kids, but where does that mindset get you, right? Now, the reality is it's harder. But the funny thing is, I've had clients with 4 kids, 3 kids working 60 hours a week. And guess what? They've made the time to make shit happen, right? They've prioritized their self-care. They haven't been perfect. They've had wobbles and their routine's been thrown out of whack. But for the most part, they've made it a priority, right? So do not make that excuse, because it's even more important for you to prioritize your self-care. Because you want to be like a role model, right? But more importantly, you want to be showing up at your best, right? Because you can't serve from an empty vessel. Like if you're not taking care of yourself, how you're doing you are doing other people a disservice, right? If you're not taking care of yourself, because you can't show up, you can't serve from an empty vessel, as I said, but also you're just not going to be able to deal with stress as much. Your longevity, you're not going to live as long. It's just reality of it, right? You're gonna die younger. So when you add all those things up, right, you've got to make that time. If you don't make that time for yourself, even if it's something simple, I'm not talking about going to the gym like Chad and I 4 times a week. Go on for a walk, right? Trying to
Yeah.
factor that into your day, like simple stuff like that people just put off. And then if you don't make time for that for yourself now, then you have to make time for chronic illness later down the line. I hate to say it, but that's just the way it goes, man.
Yeah, totally, totally. So just to start to wrap things up a little bit, I want to touch in, and talk up your coaching program really, because, in my opinion, you've built it up to become really successful. You've built an amazing community that everyone helps each other. Everyone are kind of like family in there. If someone's got a bit of they're upset with their performance for the week, or that they're not quite getting on with something, they'll post in the group. So you've done, I really commend you for the, what you've built with Optimize Your Body. Has it been a long road to achieve that? Because I guess the reason I'm asking this question, because there'll be other people who may want to get into the fitness industry and might want to, be seen as a coach or what have you, but not to disillusion them that you can just sort of, set up a Facebook page or what have you, and overnight you've built this this big brand and this big community. Just talk about, the how long and what it's taken you to get to where you are now.
Yeah, and it's what we were saying off air, right? It's like how you do anything is how you do everything, right? The reality is, you've got to be prepared with any business you build, right? Because I think 80 or 90% of businesses fail, right? And I think the remaining 10% then fail within 5 years or something, right? So it's like a small minority of businesses actually make it, because not many people are prepared to like eat shit for a period of time, essentially. So it's challenging. It's the hardest thing I've done. I think it's one of the hardest things I've ever done, to be honest. But yeah, it happened during COVID when I was PTing face to face up until COVID, and then I actually invested in myself as well. I actually invested in a mentor myself, who literally only now, I'm just leaving his program now after like 3.5 years. So I feel like I've got everything I needed out of it. But having that guidance, just like you, right? You've hired me, having that guidance to have someone just basically be a sat nav, right? Because a lot of people, they might want to start a business, or they might want to start a business or their venture or like a venture, but they'll hold back and they won't chase their dreams, because a lot of the times people are worried firstly about what other people think, right? And what I want people to really take home here, right, is like, if you really want to do something, don't do what everyone else is doing all the time, right? That's just a simple thing. I want people to understand, right now, the bar is so low, right? I was just saying to Chad then, right? Even with podcasting, if you get to 20 podcasts, right, you're in the 1% of podcasters, because 99% of them quit within 20 episodes, right? And the same goes with, like, most people are not going to necessarily see what you want to do when you're trying to build a business, and you might get pushback. And what a lot of people do then is they believe that negative, they internalize that negative self-talk, and they don't take action, or they're too fearful to chase their dreams. Then they end up regretting it. So yeah, what I would say with me is I hired someone to help me first and foremost, and I was part of a community myself, and that helped to give me that guidance so I could just get after it. Because like I said, I'll work hard, but I was kind of like not doing the right stuff, much like yourself, really, maybe with nutrition and stuff like that, right? You had the work, right? You were showing up in the gym, but you didn't really have the guidance of what to do, nutrition, lifestyle, same sort of thing. So that really, really helped. But ultimately, it just comes down to just being absolutely relentless and just keeping it really, really simple. And I think a lot of people, they really overcomplicate things. It's like people always are trying to get this perfect plan, right? This is what I see with a lot of people. They're trying to get the perfect game plan to start my bit, or I hear this all the time. Yeah, I'm going to start on social media. I'm just putting my plan together. I'm like, oh, okay, that's great. And then, a month later, how's it going then? What have you done? Oh, you're not taking action, right? I think with me, I was okay to just build as I went, build as I go. And it was the same thing. It was kind of like, right, how can I add value? I'd already been podcasting at that point as well. So I was already adding value. So it's like, right, how can I add value? How can I help people first and foremost? And then how can I turn that, into a business? And then that just takes, hard work and just literally showing up and doing, one or two simple things a day. It could be just a post on social media, for example, and then showing up on your story every day, which sounds easy, but it's not. If you do that consistently, it's a job. You have to do it. So it's those simple things, like with training, doing the reps. You've just got to do the reps, and you got to be consistent, and you got to be willing to put the work in, really. But I think the main one there is just not listening to the naysayers. And if you're staying in the nighttime to work on your business, for example, or to try and, plan an email or whatever that is, right? And whilst all your friends are out drinking and they're trying to get you to go out, then fantastic, because you're doing what they're not doing, and you're actually chasing your dream, which means you're going to get ahead, most of the time.
Yeah, that's interesting you say about the podcast, because a lot of people struggle to get off those starting blocks because they're chasing perfectionism. They'll listen back to they'll record an episode and they'll go, no, don't like it, it's not perfect. And I did that with my first one. I recorded it sort of 2 or 3 times, and then I just thought to myself, do you know what? I'd listened to a few other big podcast shows, and I went right the way back to the first episode, and I thought, listen to the sound quality. I can hear that they're making a couple of mistakes, and I thought, do you know what? I can absolutely do this. I know I can, just get on to I'm just talking at the end of the day. And I just recorded the first episode, and that's it. It's done. It's out there. And what you'll notice as you listen to people's podcasts is then things get progressively better. I guess, again, we talk about the compound effect. The more and more you do something, the better and better you get at it.
Absolutely, man. And it's just having that kind of like drive to help people, man, because that's what I love. That's what you love as well, right? I can see how passionate you are doing your thing now. And the conversations we've had and what you've actually taught me about the NLP stuff already. And you've just got to be willing to help people, and it feels good helping people. And when you actually start doing that, and you actually start actively trying to help other people, eventually the proof's in the pudding. Then people come to you because you're the one who's adding value to their life,
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people, they get caught up so much on social media, and, I want this, and I want all the materialistic stuff, and I want what they've got and stuff like that. But, do you actually want to help people, or are you just in it for yourself? Because I can guarantee you, if you're in it for yourself, it just doesn't, like, yes, you got to eat, you got to make money. I get that. But, you've got to have that purpose to actually, add value, to the world in one way or another, right?
Yeah. Just talking about that NLP, how was the visualization techniques I give you for your jiu-jitsu competition?
Yeah, man, really, really good. Yeah, because I remember we had a chat the night before the comp, and it was really, really helpful, man, to be honest. It really helped me, firstly, just relax a bit, first and foremost, because in that kind of like state of almost like anxiety. You're like thinking about it all the time. You know what I'm saying? You got that, you're in that fight or flight state all the time because you're basically, you know, going to war with other men, right? And then you just, when I started actually visualizing it, then it was like, right, I'm just like, I'm using a different part of my brain, right? And I'm then thinking more strategically and I'm thinking about the game plan while I've been practicing. And then it was almost like enjoyable then in my head, you know? It was just
Yeah.
more like a game.
Yeah.
And it did help. It actually helped on the day. As you saw, I made a mistake in that second fight, right? But it was good because and the good thing is as well, it's like going back to confidence, because I'd already done one comp, even though I was crapping myself the same as I was in the first comp. As soon as I started, I was, and like, you know, we were going at it, like both of us, amateurs, white belts, right? Going at
Yeah.
it. You know, and that's the thing with white belts is it's like more risk of getting injured because you're not as skillful and you're just trying to use power and stuff like that. But I was ready for that this time around. But also because of what you taught me, it did actually help me just think, okay, just slow down and think now about what you were visualizing last night and what my coach had just told me, you know. So it helped me slow
Yeah.
things down and process thoughts better. 100%.
Yeah. Really, really useful, isn't it? Visualization to sort of you kind of visualizing, you're preempting every eventuality that could happen out of that competition, if you like, that fight. So that when it's presented to you in real time, you're able to deal with it.
100%,
Really
man.
good.
Definitely.
Okay, Martin. So we're at that point in the show now where I like to get my guests to ask me, ask the host any question they want. So we'll wrap it up with a question that you'd like to fire at me.
Yeah, the question I've got for you, Chad, is if you had to pick one thing, what is your biggest struggle? Your biggest struggle, you know, being a father to 3 kids?
Hmm. Um, I think probably the biggest thing is balance. As um, you know, yeah, I've got two businesses, 3 kids, so balance, I would say, is the biggest challenge in trying to make sure that my kids get enough quality time with me, and not only just like my kids as a whole, like individually as well, because they each need to have some sort of father daughter or father son time individually. So sometimes that can at times be quite challenging because I might spend a bit more time with one than the other, and then it's kind of like, oh, I'm neglecting the other one. So um yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest challenge that I face. But at the end of the day, there's no guidebook written on how to be a father. It's you kind of gotta go through it and learn as you go along, and you're learning as well through each part of the process. So when they're newborn babies, you have certain challenges, and then when they become teenagers, you have a new set of challenges that you have to work with. I mean, my eldest daughter now is in a who's 14. She's in a relationship. As a father, you kind of like, that's one of those things. You're like, how am I okay with this? Is
How
this
do you deal
something
with that?
I
That's why let me just quickly ask you that as well, right? Because having a daughter, especially a teenage daughter, now this is a first relationship, right? I guess, or
yeah
like proper one.
first yeah.
How do you feel about that, man to man?
I feel really good, if I'm honest with you. And the reason for it is because she's such a good girl. She's got because we've guided her in the way that she can talk to us about anything she likes, being open and honest. We've taught her good values and belief systems. So in actual fact, the boyfriend that she has is a really nice kid. He's quite entrepreneurial himself. He started at the age of 14. He's got his own little business selling. He's designed and made mobile phone cases. So
Awesome.
yeah, he's the kind of kid who you don't mind your daughter being with. I mean, it could be far worse. I see kids her age walking around the streets now, drinking alcohol and what have you, in big groups of boys and girls. If that was the situation, then obviously I'd have to sit her down and explain to her the reasons why that's not a good situation to be in. But yeah, honestly, in the most part, um, I'm really cool with it, and I think the most important thing is about talking with your children as opposed to talking at them.
Mm. Yeah, it's perspective as well, isn't it? When you say about other people and understanding them as well, isn't it? I think, which is
Yeah,
hard. No, that's
totally.
interesting, man.
Yeah, totally. Well, anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. Again, I want to sort of, I know time is really valuable to all of us. So, thank you so much, Martin, for coming on and dedicating your time to give the listeners value today. I'm sure people will go with loads of golden nuggets on things that they can do. Would you like to give yourself a shout out now with optimize your body and everything, where people can find you, so if they want to learn more about how they can get themselves into the shape of their lives?
Sure, man. Yeah. So I'm just actually haven't got a website at the moment. I took it down and just in the process of starting to build a new one. But my best place to find me is Instagram, just at Martin Silva Fitness. And on there, I've got the link in my bio where I've got my podcast. So my podcast, you can find it anywhere. Optimize Your Body podcast. And that's on all platforms, Spotify, YouTube, the full works, iTunes. And yeah, I guess they're the main two places to find me, really. And also, if you go to my Instagram as well, there's like a train and nutrition plan on there as well, which people can get. And yeah, so that's pretty much it, really, mate.
Brilliant. Just to add that to that for you, the way in which it works is, if you just DM Martin a message, he'll have a build up a dialogue with you, a bit of a chat, on how he might potentially be able to help you. And then it's just, you just go from there, really, don't you? There's nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. If anyone wanted to, yeah, thanks for mentioning that. If anyone did want to inquire about coaching, yeah, just simply drop me a DM on Instagram. Or even if you use Facebook, you can just find me on there, I guess, Martin Silva Fitness on there, and just drop me a message. But nah, your best bet is to just go on Instagram and just drop me a DM. But also the other alternative is there is a coaching inquiry form if you wanted to, just fill out the form. That's again on my Instagram, the link in my bio. Click the link and then you can fill out the coaching inquiry form. But to be honest, just like Chad said, the best thing to do is just to drop me a DM on Instagram. We could just have a chat.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, Martin. Well, thanks again for your time.
Thanks, brother. It was great to jump on, man.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate.